So Adrian's the founder of a company called Clicks, and what was more exciting is that Adrian actually won Growth Startup of the Year at the awards with a hardware business, which was incredible. And yeah, a big round of applause for that. Thanks so much for joining us, Adrian. Would you like to tell us the Clicks story in your own words then?
Yeah, I think it's well. First of all, thanks for having me, and great to meet everyone here. I didn't put my hand up when Matt said anyone been here before or anyone first time. So my story of entrepreneurship actually started 6 years ago. Clicks is my second business. The first one hasn't exited; it's still going. Very similar stuff to what we do, but I think all of the learnings, all of the experiences, the journey, and the team have helped me get to Clicks now. In the last 6 years, the previous business was called FX Tech. We built and created our own consumer tech products like smartphones. We did other devices. We did accessories. We had a crazy journey. We did our own keyboard phone, first of all. We launched it in 2019. We sold it like D2C online, 63 countries, did okay at the start, and then COVID hit and everything went down. We then got onto a second product that was like crypto Web3 based. That scaled like crazy because it was kind of COVID times. There was one day in summer 21 where I was pretending I was like a baller on my phone, the Shopify going off. And we did over £600,000 in revenue in that one particular day. So I was like, wow. And then 6 months later, everything tipped over and we were in a really bad situation. We found our way through, business is still going. But all of that experience, all those learnings have really put us to where Clicks is today. So Clicks started as an idea that we had because we're really passionate about the product, about smartphones. And a lot of us as a founding team love keyboards. A lot of us are all kind of ex-BlackBerry users. How could we meld and bring together a keyboard experience into an iPhone? And that was really the challenge we set ourselves at the start. And in doing so, we kind of ended up with what was a small project with like 4 people, to then on a Zoom call once a week, to then less than 12 months later at a trade show, launching, we'd raised a bit of money, and we went from there.
And is it just yourself, or do you have co-founders in the business?
There are 6 of us as co-founders, and everyone's story is similar to mine in the sense that we've all done various things before. So some of the guys used to work at BlackBerry. One of the other co-founders, he used to be known online as Crackberry Kevin. He was like the BlackBerry influencer before the term was there. Himself as a successful publisher and had his own business. He exited. We've got a creator on our team, so a really great guy called Michael Fisher, who's got his own channel online called Mr. Mobile. He's got over 1 million subscribers, and he's such a lovely guy. And all of us came from the same kind of passion and love for the product, and I think that's helped us to come together and really build something that we're really proud of.
That must be one of the most sort of co-founder heavy teams I've ever heard of. What is the dynamic like between the 6 of you, I guess?
Well, the good thing is, and this is something that one of our very early kind of seed investors noticed. They said, look, you guys have actually got quite a strong team together because you cover everything from manufacturing design, which is kind of my background and my partner from the previous company, through to product expertise, through to go-to-market. And therefore, no one's stepping on each other's toes. We all come with our own experiences, and I think that's one of the reasons why when we launched, we came out with the splash.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned that sort of bad day whenever things all started turning after such a high in your previous business. What would be the sort of darkest moment you've had to date in terms of Clicks, or the hardest day? Let's put it that way.
Today was a pretty tough day.
Starting on a negative note, and then we'll work up from there.
Today was a pretty tough day. Yeah, I think every day has learnings, as always. With us, we're a consumer tech brand, so we have to put ourselves out there. We're out to build an audience, to build a base. When we started, we spent as much time working on the go-to-market strategy as we did on the product. which is why when we launched January last year, we launched at that trade show at CES. We were one of like the 3 like big star products that got a lot of press coverage. We won, I think, about 20 awards, and we then got pre-sales, and we then got going. I was like, right, we're off to the races now. We took some pretty big swings in that 12 months that we were from there, and there were some decisions that I think in hindsight we should have probably slowed down and done differently. But you don't know that until you go through that experience, and you learn just through doing and making mistakes along the way. So we've had some pretty tough moments, but it's not our first rodeo. Yeah. We've done these things before, so.
And there'll be a lot of. I know there's a few first-time founders that are in the early stages of building their business in the room today. Whenever you have those bad days, how does that affect your confidence, and how do you sort of get over that, I guess? Yeah. Are there any nuggets you can give to?
I think you have to. I think it's fine to accept the way you feel, because I think you need to accept the fact that something doesn't feel right, but then go back to take a step back. What have you achieved? Like, where are you? What's the path to get out of this? How do you do things? And having a team around you helps really well. Is really helpful. So, not every day is rosy and shiny. There are some pretty tough days. I had a pretty tough call this afternoon, but you get through them. It's the nature of being a resilient founder, and in what we do. I think we still wouldn't have it any other way. You need those days so that you can recognize and appreciate when things are going well.
And if you were to go back to, say, day one of you being a founder, even if we go back to your previous company, what would be the one bit of advice you'd give yourself back then?
Oh, really good question. It's not don't do it.
Yeah.
No, it's
we don't want that.
No, no, it's not that.
Yeah.
No, I think if I go back, I think it would be really thrive on that passion that you have, and those days when you're really having a great day and great moment, and really celebrate those moments as well. Because as a founder and going through the startup journey, there's a lot of things going on at the same time. You get your head from one thing, from whether it's product design, development, a go-to-market strategy, into something a bit more mundane like financials and some people issues. Somebody's asking you a holiday request, and then someone's asking you, well, what do you think about this color for this? And there's so much going on there, and you sometimes forget to take a step back and realize, well, actually, where are we? What have we done? And what I think pleases me the most is we create products that people really enjoy and people love. We've had so much feedback that's come through to us about how a product like this has, helped change someone's way of doing things or change their lives. Whether it's someone with visual impairment that couldn't use a phone properly before, but they now can type because they can see and feel the keys. We've had an ex-Premier League footballer who wrote a book, who then said, oh, I really wanted to write a book on my phone. I don't like using a laptop. I can now write a book on my phone. And we have Fortune 50 CEOs using this as well. And so to know that what you do has that impact on people, you forget day to day when you're in the weeds of things. So I think that would be the advice that I give to myself back then.
Yeah, no, I think that's an amazing takeaway. Talking about money, actually. So, a lot of startups, well, most startups won't happen without initial investment. Did you bootstrap Clicks, or did you raise early on?
Yeah, we raised early on. I think our process was, we had some early design concepts. We said, let's print out some prototypes. When we got them in hand, we said, right, this feels good. Let's go ahead. We then said, in order to get to launch, we need to raise some cash. So we went out to friends. We did a friends and family seed round. We raised 500,000 US just from going out there, speaking to people, just off of a dream, a vision, and some very bad-looking prototypes that didn't even work properly. We didn't take them around to show people because they wouldn't. If people saw these, they wouldn't invest. So we said, okay, this is what we're doing. This is who's on board. Come and join us. We'd love for you to be part of the journey. And on the way, we had people who, through our kind of X-network, have become real champions for Clicks and have really helped us and advised us along the way as well.
And we've had the crypto wave. and then everything was all about B2B SaaS. Probably a lot of it still is, and then now obviously AI. How do you convince people that have sort of competing demands on their capital to invest in a hardware product whenever hardware's not the flavour of the month right now?
Yeah, hardware has never been flavour of the month.
Right, yeah,
for the
that's a
last
fair
couple of
point.
years.
Yeah, that is a fair point.
I think a couple of years ago there were a lot of people investing in hardware. A lot got burned, and that sentiment hasn't come back. But that I think is also one of our strengths. Like we stand out, we're different to everyone else. We're not there doing another B2B SaaS or an AI thing. We've been tempted. How do we integrate these things into our products? But we celebrate the fact that we are a hardware first business. And those who, I think there are still companies out there that invest in hardware, in consumer, in cultural products. That's us, and that's what we do really well. And so it takes us a bit longer to find the right kind of partner, investor, growth partner. But yeah, they're good conversations.
I had a conversation just before we actually kicked off with a hardware founder, and who was yet to raise. What would the bit of advice? What bit of advice would you give them? So they're pre-product, no previous fundraising. Where would you go? What would be the advice you give?
I think you have to get to most stages. I think you have to get to some kind of MVP or prototype, right? I think you have to have something that people can not just see in a drawing and not just visualize, but actually kind of touch and feel or something like that. I think that's really important. Even if it's something to do with a feature or an experience as part of the product, because then investors will better understand why your product's different, and the fact that you've got some traction already, or you've done something, you've already created something.
Yeah, no, great advice there. In terms of, Clicks has been going for just not long over 18 months or so, and your growth has been phenomenal. So I think it's exceeded 7 million of revenue. You're in more than 100 countries, is that right? You have had some amazing retail partnerships, which we can get into later on. And you've sold more than 100,000 units as well. How did you sort of get to that stage? You raised the investment, then what were the sort of next steps in terms of go-to-market?
Yeah, so when we launched January last year, we didn't know whether anyone would want to buy this, let alone kind of where we get to. So we've been on a bit of a crazy ride. We launched, we had a lot of awareness, a lot of exposure, and then it was like, right, knuckle down, we've got to actually start building product, getting it out to market, and start with customers. Up to that point, it was quite nice. You don't have any customers. It's like a nice day job. When you have customers in, it's you've got to really be very passionate about what you do and taking care of, I think, their experiences. I think we're very lucky in the sense that we've got a lot of good people in the team. The experience that we have from D2C selling, online, creating content, creating awareness. I think all of these things helped us build the brand and the name. And then when it came to conversations with retailers, again, we were very selective as to who we spoke to and who we chose, because as a small team, you've only got a set number of days and time and resources. So we had to make some pretty tough decisions. But in the end, we said, look, we'll work with one partner in the US, one partner in Asia. We'll see if anyone kind of crops up in the UK. We ended up doing kind of boutique retail in the UK, even though it's our home market. And then focus on scaling online, because 100 countries is just through online. And the great thing is, you can scale so big just through online, just through products. And we didn't have the target of to say, right, let's hit 100,000 at the end of 12 months. But that we landed there, and it's been a pretty crazy journey up to this point, but not without its challenges. We've had to tackle things like cash flow, inventory, continuously missing dates for when we tell customers we'll get product out there. Manufacturing is not easy, right? Manufacturing stuff, we manufacture in China, in Shenzhen. We manage it from over here. My partner goes out there sometimes, but to control all of these things and then to send products across the world, and getting all these things in place within 12 months, it's been a bit of a wild ride.
Yeah, I know it sounds it. Well, fair play to you for hitting the numbers you've done. I think takes a lot
to pull that off. So fair play. One of the most exciting, parts of your growth, everyone, and you're nailing D2C right now, but landing those really strategic retail partners is one of the key, sort of paths to scale. And you recently landed Best Buy. And so for those that are not aware of Best Buy, they are an S&P 500 listed retailer with more than 1,000 stores US wide. And if you go in there now and buy a Motorola Razr phone, I don't know which model it is, but exactly that one, it actually comes bundled with the Clicks product. That is absolutely incredible for a business that's only been going 18 months. How do you land something like that?
We started our relationship with Best Buy last year. Because of our launch, the Best Buy guys were actually at the show, and I think their CEO, what we hear is their CEO said to the team, "Don't come back home until you've spoken to Clicks." And so I was like, right, okay. And it went from there. We got our product into Best Buy, into the retail stores, throughout last year. It's challenging to work with retailers. We're learning all of these things. We have a display in this new section called Theatre District, and we had to put this 2-meter display together that we had to create. We had to pay for, do all the design for, put our products on there, and then they place it in the stores. And we're in about 200 or so stores in the US at the moment. And it's gone well. It's been a great partnership. They've done a lot of great stuff for us, a lot of marketing. We've done stuff as well to drive people to those stores. And we saw them earlier this year. We keep them engaged, as any good, I think, vendor would do for for a retailer. We've gone actually out there to Minneapolis to see them on a regular basis. I don't know if anyone here knows Minneapolis. I can't think of an equivalent in the UK. It's not a quiet, exciting place, but it's where you have all of the big retailers. So you'll have Best Buy, Target, Walmart. They're all HQ'd out there. And so, we've been out there a few times to see them in person, keeping them always engaged. And when we saw them in February this year, which was actually in Barcelona, that's where the conversation started. And so after a couple of dinners, and some sharing ideas, we then kind of went back and we said, look, I think this is a good idea. Let's work on this.
That's incredible. You hear so many founders that have been chipping away for years and they're not reaching that sort of distribution that you're landing. It's well done to you and the rest of the team. One of the things that I first noticed whenever we bumped into Clicks, so we were walking around the startup tent that Clicks had a stand at. And I was actually with Alex, and we're dandering around, and I was like, Clicks, I know these guys. I know them from somewhere. And their CMO, Jeff, had gone on to LinkedIn and done a bit of really sort of hyper-targeted promotion prior to the event. It was like $1,000 or something. And we had all been shown Clicks content in advance of going to the event. And it was just so powerful. Even from I was going into it going, oh, they're like big, some of the rest of the partners, they're like sort of big global type companies, and I was like, these guys, they're big time, like they're not a startup, very much, a startup. So it was so good. Have you? And we go back to the more than 100 countries that you're sort of selling D2C in. Have you how have you done that, and B, were there any sort of tricks like that you've been able to play? Not that it's a trick, but it works very effectively.
Yeah. I think we've always operated lean since we started. Founder salaries doesn't happen, right? If you operate lean, you make every dollar, every pound that you spend go as far as you can. So whether it's on building awareness, whether it's on building brand, whether it's on we had to spend a lot of money on manufacturing. You've got to make sure that you're getting the best out of the money that you have, because it's only a short runway. And, it's great to hear that, the impression is there that Clicks is this big global brand. We do have customers in over 100 countries. We have a big email list, but we spent time building that up. And going through what's initially kind of our home turf, like the tech circles, the tech channels. I think that was a really good approach at first. And then, through a combination of paid for ads and, other awareness, we kind of slowly built it out. But, I'd love a show of hands today. Like, has anyone, who heard of Clicks before this event? That tells me we have so much work to do, right? We have so much work to do. So I will try and target every one of you in the next 12 months.
It is a slight plug on the product. So I was lucky enough to be given one of the iPhone covers, which is on my work phone. And it has been an absolute hack for me because I will be sitting and, everyone has, well, I'd say, 80% of the world have iPhones right now. And, one of the things that we've lost from the BlackBerry days was the ability to type without having to look at your phone because you can't find the letters. And so since having the Click, it took about 2 weeks actually to get used to it, I think, but once you get, your fingers adjusted back to the sort of QWERTY keyboard days of like keypad typing, I'm sitting in meetings now and I'm actually able to like type action points and notes and actually reply to some emails occasionally as well that I've been sort of neglecting at times. But we can do all that. So it's that increase in productivity is something that I had completely not anticipated whenever I saw the product. Going back to that, just one final question on the international piece. Was there anything that surprised you when scaling internationally? Were there any sort of quirks that popped up that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I think adoption in certain countries, that pop up that we hadn't thought about. So the US is our biggest market. We do 65% of our sales in the US. I think we expected that, but we've seen huge traction in Southeast Asia. In particular, Japan and South Korea. We knew from our previous products that Japanese love tech and they love buttons, but their extra level of like passion for technology. I mean, if you ever go to Japan and go to Tokyo, there are still physical buttons everywhere, from like the noodle bar to the toilets, to when you flush. Like, there's still buttons everywhere. But they took a particular liking to Clicks and to the products, and so that was a nice surprise. And then in South Korea, we have I'm going a little bit technical now, but we designed Clicks so that the keyboard mirrors the virtual keyboard, so you're not having to then relearn a new keyboard. When that maps to different languages, so whether it's if I think of like Arabic or Thai, those virtual keyboards, they have a lot more buttons on the virtual keyboard, and so Clicks doesn't work very well with those. In South Korea, they have the exact same number of buttons as our QWERTY keyboard. And so for them it was, oh, we love this product. It works really well with Korean and with English. And so the product market fit there was really good.
That's mad.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that worked well, didn't it?
Yeah.
So if we started this interview off with a look at what a bad day looked like and how you overcame that. What does a really good day look like for you?
Yeah. Oh, I think a good day is a unexpected bit of customer feedback that comes in, and somebody tells you they're enjoying the product and they like it. And I think we've had a few of those. I think the most recent one was about 3-4 months ago. Soulja Boy, US rapper, he posted on Instagram that he's one of the first rappers with a keyboard on his phone, completely organic. Like, we didn't see that stuff. He posted on there. We decided not to necessarily reshare that too much, just because of his profile. But when we see things like that, we're like, yeah, you know what? This is cool. This is nice. The product is getting out there. And then we're doing things that we're working on, like partnerships, other things. So when we decided to do this and getting a partnership with Best Buy and Motorola, that was pretty good. And so we always try and keep pushing ourselves forwards. And I can't reiterate so much, like having really good founders or co-founders with you, it doesn't make it feel so quiet and lonely every single day. You have people to bounce ideas off. And the fact that this is not our first startup for a lot of us, just means that we can go out there and we can, make things happen. And actually, yes, a lot of things we try because you don't really know if they're going to work. But if it's almost like this fail fast mentality, where if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We pivot, we do something differently.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's great advice for any first-time founders. I know they'll take a lot of sort of comfort hearing that. And one of the things, actually, just touching on that, I'm often asked, are there any hacks, in terms of productivity or, tricks that you can do in order to 2x, 3x, 10x the hours in a day? Do you have any sort of personal operating systems or any tricks that you can let us know of?
I've had one that I've developed in the last 6 months, and I'm going to do a blog post one day that's about how I built a business sitting by a swimming pool. So I'm a father of 2 kids. Both kids are in the local swim squads, and they swim at, I think, 5, 6 a.m. 3 times a week. I'm the one who's up, energetic, getting them out of bed, because when they're swimming, I'm the person sitting in the corner with my laptop, just working away. And I start my day that way, and I get an hour, hour and a half's work, and then I spend half an hour in the gym. And that sets me up for the rest of the day. And I do that not every day, right? I'm not that crazy. But I do it a couple of days a week, and it just sets me up really well for the day, for the week. And also, because we're a very global business, we have our software team in Taiwan, manufacturing partner in China, our sales marketing kind of core is in the US and in Canada. Everything is, all throughout the day. So I like doing those kind of early hours when it's quiet in the day. You're not distracted by your phone going off, things happening. There's nothing there. Just you can focus and just get things done, plan out your day, and it works really well. There are books out there that talk about, the 5 a.m. and the 5 a.m. club. Look, I think as a founder, you've got to maximize every single moment of the day, and you've got to use those times when you have just headspace to work, because throughout the day you've got people asking you things, and it's the smallest things, but you have to think and make decisions. So your own headspace, your own personal time allows you to be productive and stay on top of life as well, because we all have lives to lead outside of the startup.
Quite therapeutic, I'd imagine, as well, working by a pool the early hours of the morning, the sort of water echoing around the building.
There are no screaming kids. There are no screaming kids in armbands at that time of the morning.
Well, yeah,
nice.
That certainly helps, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we've heard, you've got an amazing team of co-founders. You've got, sounds like you've nailed distribution. You have been enjoying this fantastic growth, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. How do you make those hard calls that founders need to make in order to, cut things loose at times to preserve the integrity of the business?
Yeah. Look, at the end of the day, I think, whilst we're all passionate about what we're doing and we're on a mission, to get to where we want, you're still running a business fundamentally. And so some of the basics of, whether it's looking after financials, people, team, you have to think about what's best for the business. And you have to make decisions that might, affect your personal relationships with people or with partners. But fundamentally, if you know where you want to get to, you have to make those calls. But do it in a way that is, I think, you have integrity, you have honesty, you have collaboration. I believe in all these things, just as well as good karma, right? What goes around comes around. And so, I'd like to think that, we have got to this point now as, being, I think, a very good, honest, open, transparent company, internally and outwards towards our customers too. And we want to keep scaling this way as well. We're very careful who we work with, and we're very, I think, fortunate that we can choose. If we don't get the right kind of energy or vibe off of somebody, we'll probably choose not to work with them, because we don't think it's going to take us where we want to.
And just keeping on that sort of topic of scale again, you've proven that the product is scalable. The numbers demonstrate that, and I'm quite interested to hear what is on the horizon. What's the next big step for Clicks?
Yeah, well, I would love to disclose an exclusive about our next product. Unfortunately, I can't. I'll get shot by.
Fish for insights here. Yeah, a bit of off-market.
We have another product that's coming out in end of Q3, Q4 that is still keyboard related. So we're working towards that. That's super exciting. And then we have a horizon of things that go beyond doing keyboards, and that's into kind of next year and the year after, because I think we recognise that fundamentally what we've created isn't just a great product, but a business where we have the ability to create quickly, to bring products to market successfully, to do well with our customers, and then to sell. And so if we decide tomorrow, if the business decides, we want to create a backpack instead, if it makes sense, then I think we have the means to do so. That's not what we're going to do, though.
Yeah,
not yet. Anyway.
Nearly got a bit of intel off you.
Yeah.
So do you think is it a product company, or is this the start of a portfolio?
We're a portfolio business that make products.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I think just cautious of time, from as the final question, I guess, what do you want the legacy of Clicks to be, and for you as a founder?
Yeah. I think less about myself, but I mean, as a company, this is now, I think we've made a moment in the consumer tech world where more than 18 months ago, people thought, there is no more physical keyboards on buttons. Nothing's out there. Now when people that are in that space think, I want to still use I like the feeling of tactile buttons, they think of Clicks. I think that's a really good place for us, and we want to keep building that to be our legacy at some point, where people turn around and go, I remember that cool company that did this. And in our space, there are stories like, whether it's you guys all know, like Beats, for example, GoPro, Nest, all these big companies that came along from very similar beginnings and created these huge global businesses. We're looking to create the same kind of momentum and leave the same kind of legacy, where I'd love to see Click still around in 10 years' time, building whatever it does.
Well, I really hope it is. So yeah, with that, let's give Adrian a big round of applause. Just before we wrap up, does anyone in the audience have any questions? So I will give you it. Okay,
Sure.
there we go.
You can appear.
Okay.
No problem. Sorry, probably one of the tough moments days question.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your factory is in China, but 65% of your market is in the US.
Yes.
You know what's coming up. How are you dealing? How are you dealing with the
Tariffs.
exactly
It's a great question. When the tariffs were announced, we were banging our heads on tables for probably a couple of days, and then as things changed, announcements came out, things changed. We realized a few things. Number one, let's not react too quickly, because everything keeps changing. Number two, let's not make any big long-term changes, because because the nature of things changing, you shouldn't make such a big shift. We saw I know companies that moved their manufacturing to Vietnam. They started doing it last year in anticipation for some kind of trade war, and then they got hit with a 45% tariff. So we said, right, let's not do that. In a way, it's forced us to be more creative with how we take products into the US, and we do it in a way now that's actually cheaper and lower than what it was before. Yeah.
It's incredible. Anyone else?
I'm just wondering, what metrics or KPIs do you personally focus on for your business?
As a CEO founder, or just the business generally?
The business in general, what you prefer, what you think is most critical.
Yeah, I think we look at, obviously, sales and unit volumes of products. I think at the end of the day, we're trying to scale our products, get them out to market. But we also pay really close attention to customer feedback. And that's not just, do you like the product, do you not like the product? Because we get a mixture of both. It's also how quickly are we responding to incoming, like whether it's through our ticketing system, whether it's on Discord, whether it's on Instagram, how quickly are we responding to people? And also, ratings, other sentiments, because we're here not just to build good products, but to build a brand as well. I don't think any of us want to, go to sleep at night knowing that you might have built a really cool product, but your customers aren't happy for whatever reason. We want to try and do both. And I think that, to me, is a good formula to help build a really successful business for a consumer business in the long term.
Thank you. Hi, so just piggyback and going off his question, my question would be, what are your own KPIs? And I mean that in the sense of, as a leader in the team, how do you upskill, if I can use that, where you're scaling your team from 0 to what it is right now, and you you ensure that you are still able to be that leader for your team? So how do you upskill yourself? Yeah.
Got it. I always think 6, 12 months ahead. I think that's really kind of what I think about. I'm very fortunate that the team look after a lot of the kind of day-to-day that we do. I don't have to get on there and answer queries for tickets. I don't have to get involved in every single decision on a go-to-market strategy or on some of the manufacturing. And as a leader, I want to make sure that I empower people, give them the resource, give them the vision and the plan as to where we're going. And I think that's been really important in the last 18 months because, you can create a product and bring it out to market, but unless you have a plan as to where you want to go and how you want to get there, you're going to kind of hit a roadblock. And so, for example, when I talked earlier about getting into different markets across the world, we had that, as a leadership team, we had that conversation to say, where do we focus our time and effort? Because we're a small team. Where are we going to get the most impact? Where do we think we're going to, achieve the most, have the best, customer experience? And so we didn't go to somewhere like, at the time we had a lot of people coming to us from the UAE and saying, can you build, we love your product, can you build, a localized keyboard and come and sell it here? And you had to make a decision on call to saying, well, we understand that it's, a market that has really good propensity to spend, a great iPhone density kind of population, but in terms of numbers, it's still a 2 to 3 million country versus here, which is 70, US, which is 320.
That's great. I'm impressed by the quality of the questions here so far. Do we have any other takers? There we go. Being walked across each side of the room. So yeah, here we go.
Could you comment on your IP protection? On what lengths do you go to protect your technology?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we get asked the question a lot by investors, as you can imagine. We've built a bit of a moat around our product. So every single product that we've designed, we have to build a new one for every phone model. We have design patents for each one of those that we've registered in the major markets. So we do it in US, UK, Europe, sometimes in China as well. We've got a patent for the concept of a keyboard into an enclosure, into a case, and we had that patented before we launched. We then also have, it's not quite a patent, but for our product to integrate so well into iPhones, we've had to do this made for iPhone certification. And you can only get that if you use Apple source components, it's from their supply chain, and we planned that from day one. And all of this is because how do we stop somebody else from coming in and doing a copycat product and kind of, taking our idea and doing it for themselves? And, at this point we've invested, quite a large sum in just putting all these things together so that for someone to come and do this, it would be really difficult. We've had a cheap knockoff product come to market in the last few months. For us, it's great because it's validation. It's like that someone else thinks your product is good, that they want to copy it and try and do the same thing. Our guys in China actually, they won't watch this. They got it and they dissected it, and we have over 100 different components within here. You wouldn't think there's 100 different components in this product. Theirs had about 25, and it just wasn't the same. Wasn't the same experience. So we've thought very carefully about the design, the protection, and how we really do so, because it's but that comes from experience as well, having built these things before.
Great question. If anyone is still yet to protect their IP, do reach out to the Howard Kennedy team. We do a fantastic job. There you go, shameless plug. Question there at the back.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Matt, for brilliant presentations. It was pretty insightful. My question is for someone like me who spends, let's say, 15 years in financial markets and do remember BlackBerry corporate fonts. The question would be, what would be your strategy for Clicks to be more a must-have in financial markets and elsewhere, instead of just hype and novelty?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. We approach our products thinking about two things. Number one, what problem are we solving, right? You know, it's a nice gadget, right? It's nice to have keys on the phone, but what problem are we solving here? How does that help people? And number two, how do we see people using products in the next couple of years? And I think, you know, those two principles, you know, if we apply them to something like financial markets or any other kind of sector, that's how we really get to, get to a point to say, actually, this is the use case. This is what we see, or how we can apply our product, you know, in that sense. And so in financial markets, there might be something around, you know, whether it's the way you communicate, specific apps, something around there that we can integrate into our product set, and then create that must-have kind of, you know, scenario. A bit like when Matthew said he likes to type again, you know, with his without looking in the meeting, you know, still paying attention, having his eye contact, and still typing, but under the table. You know, that kind of, you know, use case. I think, you know, that's what we kind of think about.
For me, so coming back to the use case and like the research you did at the very start, I mean, in some sense, it's almost counterintuitive the way the market is going, that you've come up with a keyboard. How much time did you invest in understanding the persona of the individual you think would buy this to give you the confidence to say, yeah, let's do this? Yeah.
That's a really good question. We asked ourselves this question a lot. We had a few cheat codes, right? So when I mentioned some of my co-founders, Kevin is still, you know, because he had his following from back in the BlackBerry days, he still gets emails and messages and DMs every single day. Do you know when the next BlackBerry is coming out? Do you know when the next BlackBerry is coming out? You know, that is validation that people out there still are interested in physical buttons. Mr. Mobile, one of the tech, YouTubers, it's the same thing. He often has conversations with people about buttons on phones. So we recognize that it's no longer billions of people wanting to use a product like this, but there's still a really strong demand out there. And it's almost like, well, what is the contrarian view to us using the virtual keyboard today? And actually, there is still a strong use case for typing on buttons. Right? When we go back to our desks, instead of our laptops or desktops, we use the same keyboard that we've been using for as long as we've been using these products. So that won't change. You know, we often get asked, what about voice? You know, people now just speak into their phones. What about something else? It's like, yes, they will come along and they will create some kind of fundamental shift. But our product is almost like it's going to be there for a long time, right? Because there are people that are used to using this, and you can't break a habit of, 10, 20 years.
Thank you very much for the, for the speaking and the show. I have a question. I noticed you said you do D2C as well too, and I was wondering, when did you have to set up a limited company, for example, in Europe, to handle the dispatching of items to people within Europe? Because I know, for example, a company in the UK now that is trying to expand to different countries around the world to send items there. When it comes to having to send to places like Europe, then you have to think of IOSS or all the other like red tapes in places like Europe. So have you had to use maybe the UK company to handle the dispatching of items directly to customers in Europe, or have you had to set up an separate entity in Europe to handle something like that?
Got it. Yeah, good question. It's all about when you scale, right? So when we started, we shipped everything from one place to everywhere in the world, and that was from Hong Kong. And the reason being was because we didn't know how many products you need to send to a different part of the world. You just don't know these things. So it's just a lot simpler to send it all from one logistical hub. As we learn our markets, we've then set up, we have a 3PL in the US, we have one here in the UK, and then we still have the one in Hong Kong, and we might open one or two more. These are all partnerships, and these are all services that you can spin up quite easily, but it's around scaling your business and growing in the right way. We've only set up a lot of these things in the last, I'd say, like 3 months, just because we now understand where we need to get product and how to move it around. But at the same time, we could have made some calls where we did that too early, and then we had products in a different side of the world. It would have cost us money to move things around, and it would have been a different situation. So there are ways that you can scale very lean and simply at the start. And I think we chose just use Hong Kong as the shipping hub, and then moving out from there. Now we did benefit from the de minimis. That was a great thing for us, as well as Temu. It was really good. But we adapt, right? Now that that's no longer there for us, we've then changed our model. And there's always a solution, right? You're never the only, when it's logistics, you're never the only company doing this. There are so many other companies out there doing similar things to what you do with probably a lot more experience. And you learn, you network, you talk to people, and you figure out a way.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Adrian. I know we'll all be cheering you on over the next 10 years and onwards.